Welcome back. I have got another great Revolutionary War story for you today. Now, if you remember, yesterday I posted a video about how North Carolina's first flag had a hornet's nest on it. Well, today I'm going to go a little bit deeper about that hornet's nest. And today's story is called The 1776 North Carolina Militia That Fought with Hoes, Skillets, Hornets, and Other Household Items. How the militia improvised its way through a revolution, one household object at a time. Now, this essay is on my Substack, Our Native Carolina. So, go on over there and sign up. This is free and you'll learn something. And so, if you don't mind, I'd like to read this to you. And let's begin. There's a special kind of creativity that blooms when you're undersupplied, overworked, and thoroughly irritated with the British Empire. North Carolinians in 1776 had all three conditions in abundance, which is why our militia developed a reputation for showing up to battle carrying objects that belonged in a barn, a kitchen, or a church. It gets good. Anywhere, really, except a battlefield. British officers complained constantly about the irregularity of the Carolina backcountry. What they meant was, these people keep charging us with farm tools and church furniture, and we are not emotionally prepared. That's what it meant. So, take the humble hoe, for instance. A hoe is a gardening tool to most of the world, but to North Carolina in 1776, it was a frontier halberd with excellent reach and the added benefit of still having dirt clinging to the blade. Men walked straight out of the fields, sunburned and fed up, swinging that thing with the righteous fury of someone who had been awake since dawn and was tired of imperial nonsense. A hoe in motion was less a weapon and more a statement about agricultural rage, which is why it belongs on any list of improvised Carolina weapons. Now, the next weapon we have is an axe. Axes were no better or worse, depending on your perspective. An axe in the Piedmont was a daily companion used to build cabins, chop firewood, and scare off anything with teeth. When a loyalist wandered onto your property with an attitude, the axe was already in your hand, and the conversation tended to resolve itself very quickly. Subtlety was not the strong suit of the Carolina frontier, and the axe reflected that beautifully. Then there were broom handles, the unofficial weapon of women who had absolutely no patience for British interference. A broom handle is light, fast, and perfect for whacking someone who underestimated you. The militia called it improvisation. The women called it housekeeping. Either way, it worked. Our next weapon of choice was the cast iron skillet. It's my personal favorite. Also made their way into the fray. A skillet in 1776 was a cooking vessel, a family heirloom, and a blunt force solution to unexpected visitors and back-talking husbands. You could fry cornbread in it at noon and defend your homestead with it at dusk. British soldiers never fully recovered from the realization that Carolinians were willing to swing cookware with the same enthusiasm they used to season it with. A skillet was not technically a weapon, but certainly behaved like one. Trust me, I know. And then, of course, there was the hornet's nest. Yes, they really did this. Carolina militiamen would hurl a hornet's nest into enemy lines, creating instant pandemonium and shared experience of being stung in the face by an insect that did not ask to be involved in the American Revolution. This bit of chaos is how we earned the nickname a damn hornet's nest of rebellion, which remains the most accurate Yelp review of North Carolina ever written. The hornet's nest was not a weapon so much as a natural disaster deployed with intent. Improvisation didn't stop there. Fence rails, for example, were long, sturdy, and always lying around. They were meant to keep livestock in and neighbors out, but they also proved remarkably effective at knocking a British officer clean off his horse. A fence rail was the perfect weapon for someone who wanted to fight but didn't want to put down their cider. Wagon pins, thick wooden pegs used to hold wagon wheels in place, also found their way into the battle. When tempers flared, someone would yank one out and start swinging. A wagon pin fight was essentially a Revolutionary War bar brawl, except outdoors and with more yelling about taxes. They were short, heavy, and ideal for close quarters discussions about liberty. And then there were church pews. When the militia ran out of proper weapons, they turned to the Lord's furniture. A church pew leg was solid, heavy, and surprisingly aerodynamic once detached. Imagine being a British soldier and realizing the man charging you is wielding a piece of Methodist seating, or a Baptist for that matter. That's the kind of psychological warfare no amount of training prepares you for. All of this, the hoes, the axes, the broom handles, the skillets, the hornet's nest, the fence rails, the wagon pins, and the church pew legs, speaks to the deeper truth of North Carolina militia. These were not trained soldiers. They were farmers, hunters, blacksmiths, mothers, daughters, preachers, and people who had been mad since 1765 and were simply waiting for an excuse. Improvisation wasn't a quirk. It was a survival skill. If you had a musket, wonderful. If you didn't, you grabbed whatever was closest and made it work. North Carolinians are famous for their make-do attitude. The British expected orderly lines and polished discipline. What they got instead was a broom-wielding maw-maw, an angry wife with a skillet, and a hornet's nest flying through the air, and someone sprinting toward them with a church pew leg like they were late for revival. This is why the militia earned its reputation, not for uniformity, but for creativity, not for discipline, but for determination, and not for weaponry, but for the sheer Carolina audacity of turning everyday objects into instruments of rebellion. Improvised? Absolutely. Effective? Without question. Deeply funny in hindsight? Oh, hell yeah. Every time I dive into North Carolina history, I'm reminded that our ancestors were equal parts resourceful and ridiculous, a combination I consider our region's greatest inheritance. This essay grew out of affection, the deep, abiding love for a people who would absolutely defend their homes with a hoe, a skillet, or a piece of church furniture, if that's what the moment required. We are resourceful and have always made do with what we got. Researching the militia, always brings me back to the same truth. North Carolinians didn't win battles because they were polished or uniform. They won because they were stubborn, inventive, and willing to turn everyday life into a form of resistance. That's something to be proud about, but also quite humorous and admirably heroic, too. I like to imagine these stories being told the way they were first remembered, on porches, around campfires, and in kitchens where cast iron skillets still hangs within an arm's reach. Humor has always been one of our oldest tools of survival, and if the Revolutionary War taught us anything, it's that a well-timed joke can be as sharp as any blade. North Carolina history is full of grit and grief, but it's also full of joy, mischief, and the kind of improvisation that makes you proud to claim this place as home. I love North Carolina, and I'm so proud to be born and raised here. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope you all have a good evening, and I will see you next time.